African American cinema, independent cinema, is struggling.
Most young people who want to be filmmakers have no reference, no system of continuity, and they always are starting, and they think they're the first who Columbus, discovered America.
It's kind of nerve-wracking not to know where we are in this window. Is it the beginning? Are we in the middle of it? Is it almost over?
Hi, my name is Michael Dennis, and I'm a black filmmaker. In 2006, I created the show Reelblack TV with the intention of capturing the voices that are making up the new black film revolution. For the next half hour or so, we're going to take a look at some of the highlights from these interviews and ponder the question, what is black film, where are we now, and where do we need to go? Welcome to Black Film Now.
Whether you're large or you're independent, real black, the Philly film establishment. Quiet, speeding, rolling, action, making movies in Philly the main attraction. Cut, no, this to end for me, but if I don't see you later, then I see you in the movies.
The current state of African American film is expectant. It's like an expectant mother. There's a lot of writer-directors, African American writer-directors in their 20s and early 30s, and a lot of us have a lot of work, kind of in our minds and on our hard drives. But who I don't know is the sort of business side. I don't know a lot of people who are in the infrastructure or of the mind to create the infrastructure to produce these films and to get the monetary resources necessary collected and connected to us, the eggs.
I think that African American films are making African American themed films and highlighting and showcasing African American talent are making more money than ever before, but there's not quite the diversity of voices telling our stories that we need. So I think that we need more filmmakers involved in the game, helping to put our images out there.
The state of African American cinema today is exciting. We have the opportunity to go direct to our audience. You have things like Affirm. You have amazing films like Middle of Nowhere, Restless City, Mother of George. You've got filmmakers who are pulling together the resources in the micro-budget filmmaking community to put their work out there. So it's exciting.
I think it's still very hard for African Americans to make fiction films and get those films out there and to create an audience for those films. I think there's films being made. I think that there's not, for whatever reason, there's not the kind of great African American filmmakers that I would love to see making those films. I don't know who they are, So we have people who've made a lot of films that are not that good, and we have other people who make one film that's pretty good, but then it's very hard to get the next film going and the next film going and the next film going. And I think one of the things, about filmmaking, it's like, writing a novel, probably, you get better and better as you go. Your first film shows some talent, and then you hone that talent as you go. I think one of the hard things has been for African Americans to kind of keep going and to really develop their talent.
It's definitely not so much at the Renaissance level that it was in the 90s, but I do see this next year a lot of films coming out starring African American actors that were produced or written or directed by African American talent. So I'm optimistic that this next year will continue to help support the trend.
I think it's Spike Lee that said, every 10 years somebody's like, oh, the rebirth of black film, and there's a spate of black films around. And he's right. This is like the rebirth. There's so many great filmmakers around. And there's more than one black film this year. I mean, that's amazing. And the question is sustainability. That is really the most difficult thing, because it's easy to make one film. It gets harder to make the second film, and then you start to get tired. When do you get 3 picture deals? How do you make that happen? When does somebody say, you know what, I love your vision of the world, here's a development deal? So that's what makes it hard. And you have these wonderful filmmakers, and you'll see years in between their independent projects, and then they're doing something else to make a living, like screenwriting, like making commercials.
I have this theory, kind of pedestrian theory, but just that there's this hole in the center. So we have sort of, and if I'm thinking of like cinema of color in a way, but I'm also, in a way, perhaps speaking more specifically about African American cinema. But I feel like we kind of have over here and we have over here. There's sort of like a, but in the center, there is this hole, and it's devoid of content. There are some people, like the dude who made Medicine for Melancholy, who are there. There are geniuses like Charles Burnett. I love Love and Basketball, for instance, because it satisfies like the 16-year-old in me. And I think it's beautiful and all about love. And so there are these really wonderful examples. The door gets sort of creaked open a little bit, and then a movie kind of slips through, and then, another one at some point later on, and then, and so on and so on. And I think that what happens is that the infrequent sort of nature of all of it doesn't help to kind of really grow anything. It is a rare occurrence to sort of see African Americans looked at in a varied and complicated and layered way.
I remember seeing Medicine for Melancholy and thinking it existed in a vacuum. I didn't know where it came from. But then shortly after that, I think was Night Catches Us. And I feel like there's something that I'm missing, but obviously Ava's movies, I Will Follow, was definitely one of them. And then it became, you only need, when I was a journalist, there was a rule. You only need 3 things to make a trend. And that's 3 things right there.
The film industry works in cycles. And just like, with any genre, horror or romantic comedy or sci-fi, it works in cycles where there's a period of time where a certain kind of film is hot, and then it'll cool, and then it'll pick back up. And there was a time, you mentioned a decade ago, when there were a lot of films that were by and about African Americans being made, and it did kind of cool. Now you're seeing a resurgence of it, and I think that's exciting. I think that the quality of the films now has definitely increased.
We're in the midst of something that, we'll look back on. It'll be a question of, what did we do with it and how far did we push it forward?
While I do see some growth, there's a lot to do. When you really look at the number of directors that DGA is employing, or the number of writers that the WGA, the numbers aren't good. So my goal as being part of the studio system is to do what I can to really help bring and usher in new voices and to hire when I can and where I can, because I think it's important as the world has changed. It's not the world is changing. The audience has changed. We live in a diverse world now. So I think it's critical that film keep up with the way that the world looks.
Do filmmakers of color share a greater social responsibility when making work? What are some of the challenges that are faced when trying to create work within the mainstream?
If you find an ahistorical individual, you found someone who is a fool dangling. And when you find a fool dangling, they will fall for any trick. And so if they don't think they're connected to the civil rights movement or the African independence movement or the freedom efforts of people in Latin America or anywhere else, then they are connected to something. And there is this whole notion that we can have a dangling individual who is just being themselves as they express themselves, which is a foolish individual. Because if they're dangling themselves and expressing themselves, let them do it in a language that they create. Let them do it with cameras that they invent.
Well, film is used as a powerful weapon of communication, for good and for evil. The technology itself is really quite remarkable, and I think it has given great opportunity to human life to be able to record, to document, to tell stories, to make the world indelible, and put it in a place that can be forever. It's a remarkable power. What we do with it, in the final analysis, will define, has it been used to truly enhance humanity, or has it been used to suffocate the life out of all living things?
There's always a balance in being a responsible artist activist or responsible human being in society today. I always have to weigh my artistic choices with their societal relevance.
What do I call myself? I am a Black filmmaker, but I feel like anyway, I will say my name. It's become existential for me. So I will say I am Shola Lynch and I am a filmmaker. I am Shola Lynch and I am a Black filmmaker. I am Shola Lynch and I am a Black feminist filmmaker. I am Shola Lynch and I am a Black feminist public historian filmmaker. There's so many different, don't box me in, man, that's what I'm trying to say.
People say, oh, Kimberly, I wish you could see you so much more. I wish I could see you so much more. I'm like, you don't want to see me so much more because you'd see me in a lot of things you wouldn't really like. Because I do get things that come to me all the time, and I don't want to do just stuff just to do stuff. It really has to mean something, and those are few and far between. So you may not see me so much, but when you do, you can be pretty sure that it's something that's worth your while, and because it's got to be worth my while, and I feel like it's going to serve you in some way.
Tyler Perry. How has the work of Tyler Perry helped or hindered the black film movement? We explore this issue in this next segment.
Don't shoot! It's Helen, your granddaughter. Don't shoot!
What the hell? Girl! I always open the door this time of night shooting. It ain't nothing but a crackhead or the police knocking on your door this time of night. What you doing here this late?
Tyler and I did Diary of a Mad Black Woman together and had a great time doing that and knew we wanted to do something else. And 10 films later, he called me and said, I have our next movie, and it was for colored girls. It was an amazing experience. When we did Diary, he didn't actually direct that film. Darren Grant directed that film. He was a learner. He took it all in and observed. And this film, he was on the ball. He wasn't messing around, calling his shots, calling his lenses, dictating his lights and making it happen and directing us as actresses. So he's amazing. He's like the bravest artist I know.
Tyler Perry's empire really helped to inspire a lot of black filmmakers in a way where they were like, okay, what he's doing is amazing. I could produce films too. I could start from the bottom and get here, to quote Drake. But at the same time, he also inspired a lot of filmmakers to be like, I hate this so much that I know that I could do better. And I really want to make something happen.
In terms of popular releases, doesn't seem to be much of a state of black film right now. And everything I keep hearing is all comes back to Tyler Perry. And it's like, well, Tyler Perry did this and Tyler Perry did that, and he's a great businessman, and he's employing black people, and he's doing this and he's doing that. And someone asked me after the book came out, what did I think of Tyler Perry? I took a little bit of a dig at him in the book and said he's only made one film. Because the plot lines are pretty repetitive and the themes are certainly quite repetitive and sort of in your face.
Tyler's done what he's been doing, and you see a lot of other films getting made. And I don't know that if you didn't have a Tyler Perry, if you would see, what you're seeing now. So, I think what he's been doing in the industry is critical and very important.
Our lack of production of our own films has hindered our ability to tell our own stories in a major way. I think the studios don't really appreciate the black marketplace. I think, Tyler Perry is really the only person who can get a movie made, which is great, but at the same time, there's so many people out there of interest and so many people with power that we should be able to walk into a studio or just, start a production company and make our own movies.
Hollywood often represents the pinnacle of success for filmmakers and actors, but do we need to be a part of the system in order to tell stories about black folks? In this next segment, we look at the advantages and disadvantages of being independent.
What I tell my students who want to become filmmakers, who want to race into Hollywood, check why you want to be there. If you want to be in Hollywood, why? To make films, to screenwrite, whatever, to just be up around stars. You don't need to make films to do that. There's other ways to do that. But if you want to be there to change, to storytell, to build your body of work and have an impact on the world, you don't have to do that in Hollywood. You can do it here in Philadelphia or wherever. With the new age of technology and the internet and VOD and all these forms of YouTube storytelling and flip cam storytelling, you could be anywhere. And some of those things are taking over Hollywood. So I think every young filmmaker should question where they want to be, why they want to be there.
Hollywood likes you in a certain way. They like you a certain way. They have Hollywood's interesting. They like you a certain way when you're black. Mm-hmm. You damn near have to be a black Anglo-Saxon. They know the difference. You know what I'm talking about. You worked on jobs. You've seen how white people relate to black people that really kiss their behinds. They'll tell you, oh, I love Jane. I just love it. Why can't you be more like Jane? Mm-hmm. Because you can't have a black conscience. It's all right to have a white conscience. Mm-hmm. Things can be too black, but they can never be too white. They can't be white enough.
Right.
Now, you've heard white people go, that's too black. What nerve? But no one says that's no one goes around saying that's too white.
Even when you think you have control, you don't have control. At the end of the day, if you got a deal and you produce your own things, you're going to a studio for distribution. So even when you have control, you don't have control. I don't care who you are, you know what I'm saying? Unless you're, what's the guy's name? Bobby Johnson, or that was in charge of BET. That's about the only guy that pretty much, you know, had control. He's in charge of his own decisions.
They're not making as many movies as they used to in Hollywood. They're only doing literally maybe a tenth of the movies they used to do. And so, and everything is now the big blue chip movies. It's gonna be the if you're in a superhero for the most part, or animated flick, they're not really doing much, and they're not doing many comedies. And they're not definitely, so when movies start going, the black movies are gonna be the first to go. And so, you know, that they're gonna be hit the hardest. It's kind of like when there's a recession, black people hit the hardest.
How does the movie game differ from the music game or the acting game?
More money. It just takes a lot more money to get a movie out. You know, like even when we opened Art of Rap, we opened on 150 screens. Prometheus opened on 3,000 screens. You know, to even have a movie in an area, like we tried to get our movie in Arizona, they said we had to put $100,000 worth of promotion in this area for our theaters to carry it. So the money is huge. You got to have multi-millions of dollars to get in the game. And the film business likes it like that. It's harder. Anybody with a laptop, with Pro Tools, with a, you know, with Photoshop can put an album out right now and put it on iTunes. It's not that easy with a movie.
Us as urban performers, you know, our crowd and our fan base is loyal and it's huge. So if this fan base is huge, why is it that we're always crossing over to the other side? It should be the same thing for that side to cross over here the same way that we're crossing over to there. It's not a thing of race, really. It's just a thing of, you know, that word. I think that word kind of puts a roadblock in growth at times, you know. At the end of the day, support is support. And right now I'm happy and thrilled with the fact that my support is coming from all races.
I did this movie out of necessity. You know, as I've done every movie that I've done out of necessity. I don't want to, you know, I didn't want to write, star, produce. I have to, because if you're going to be a filmmaker, especially a black filmmaker, I can't be a black actor. I can't, because there's no work for black actors. Now, if I want to be an actor, right, or I want to be a black actor, I have to be a writer, a producer, a director, and I have to do all this just so I create work for my actor.
It's easier now to make the films because I've made a mantra to myself that I'm gonna, if I can't make it within the system, I'll make it within my system.
Ava DuVernay and Issa Rae, two African-American filmmakers at the forefront of what's happening in black film now.
I think one of the most common mistakes that independent filmmakers make is feeling like your picture is finished when you lock picture. You focus on actors, cinematography, the writing. People spend 10 years on a screenplay. It's a labor of love. They get the financing. They lock picture, they finish it, and then they expect to hand it off to someone. And as independent filmmakers in 2010, that's not where it ends. You need to be able to market and understand the distribution of your film. Until you are in a theater with butts and seats, until you have people playing your DVD, watching it on VOD, it's on basic cable, it's on premium cable, until you have exploited all the rights of your picture, you're not finished. And it's astonishing to me that people finish their film and walk away. In this day and age, especially as filmmakers of color, we can't do that.
I think this generation is just defined by those who are willing to get up and make it happen for themselves. I think they're, you know, you have your Ava DuVernays who have, you know, created their own distribution paths. You have your Justin Simeons who have crowdfunded and made a name for themselves. He made a name for himself by crowdfunding and making the film that he's been wanting to make by saying, I'm not gonna wait for these executives and distributors, I'm just gonna do it myself. And we got into Sundance, won an award. You have even the older generation filmmakers like the Spike Lee looking to the younger audiences to fund a film that he has been wanting to make for a while but hasn't gotten permission to. So it's a generation of filmmakers that's not asking permission or not waiting for the green light. They're making it happen for themselves.
How did you come up with the concept of a firm? I mean, for those who don't know, can you explain a little bit of what a firm means, and then how did it come about?
Yeah, Firm is the African American Film Festival Releasing Movement, and basically it was collaborative.
of like-minded individuals from all around the country that I'd come across, who kind of decided together that we could release films without permission. Really kind of functioning as true artists and truly independent. Now, independent film has really come to mean a handful of companies that are controlling independent images. And you have more and more people outside of the Black community that have been, in the DIY movement for quite some time. And so we kind of took it a step further, and a DIT, doing it together. And instead of doing it yourself, we do it as a group. We release films, we market them, we promote them, we make them, and it's just a new way to approach cinema.
Basically, the web has changed independent film for anybody, no matter what color culture you're coming from, but especially for us as African American filmmakers and audience who have our own particular set of issues with entertainment and our images being portrayed and controlled by other particular cultures without our cultural interests. I think, yes, that's exactly, it means it's very important to us because now we are green lighting our own stuff. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But it doesn't matter. At least it's unfiltered. At least it's what we want to do. And at least it's what the audience is getting. That's an alternative to what they're getting in other mediums.
My aha moment happened in 2007, just when I created my first YouTube series, Dorm Diaries, and I had an audience there. And just being able to write something and film it at a very low cost and have an audience, whether that audience was like 500 people, that was more of an audience than I had ever had in my entire life at that point. And so that was, for me, a moment to be like, I'm gonna start taking YouTube and the internet seriously. I'm gonna establish my own audience and, again, stop asking for permission to put my work out there. I don't have to.
Recite the Constitution's preamble. You know what a preamble is?
We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union.
How many county judges in Alabama?
67.
Name them.
You're in the midst of making history here. You are, but it's a long journey. I mean,
Yeah.
and I know Middle of Nowhere would have been your first film if you had your druthers, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you share what that story was about?
Well, my first script I ever wrote was Middle of Nowhere. And that's when I thought you could only make films by asking for permission. And so I went around asking for permission. And people were like, no, we do not want to make that film. And so the failure of getting Middle of Nowhere up and running at first really spurred me to start thinking independently. So it was a gift that didn't happen in that way. And so I tried to figure out something that I could make without asking for permission, without asking for money. I had a little bit of money, so I wrote something for that little bit of money. That was I Will Follow.
The Hollywood system does not want to make the films of Ava or a film like this I just did Red Summer, but I think that is a testament to her and myself that we both believe in what we're doing. We have belief. There's an audience for our films, and we do what we can. We make do what we got to make it happen, which really has been the story of us as descendants of slaves. Make do what you got, make it happen.
If I was going to sum it up, I would say it's optimistic. I think it's cautiously optimistic.
Some of the most interesting voices are coming out of, the independent world. So it is something I fully support. And, my wife, ironically has some independent projects that, she's getting going and getting done and very supportive I am of the independent world because, sometimes in the studio structure, because the financials are so, massive, and on any film, even on a low budget film, tens of $millions are being spent that have to be recouped in order for that to be a good business decision. So sometimes it prevents us from taking the risk sometimes or going after the things that, may need a little more care. And so that's when the independent world, can fill in the gap and really be a vehicle for new voices and new talent and new directors that maybe that script couldn't get made through the studio system, but it's still the story to tell.
My generation of filmmakers are very clear of one thing and one thing only: strength and goddamn numbers.
Strength comes from unity, you know what I mean? I think that people staying in touch with each other and sharing information and insight, you know what I mean, and supporting each other as we grow is the most important thing.
I'm always going to keep my foot in the internet door, because that's just going to be my raw artistic expression at its best, you know. That's just my pure voice. And honestly, the mediums are merging. So, you know, film is online, television is online, House of Cards is a web series. I don't care what anyone says. So, I mean, I can't help but to.
What would be wonderful is if it's the start of something that's a continuum, something that doesn't have a finite end, you know, just a change. The time when it changed, the time when, you know, filmmakers felt empowered to tell their stories their way, and that they knew that there was an audience that would meet them if they brought it to them. And remember when it all started back in 2000 whatever, you know, I mean, that would be amazing.
It hasn't changed any from Frederick Douglass. A slave ain't supposed to die a natural death. Keep on fighting.